Great. Welcome to the first Human First CEO series we are launching on LinkedIn Live. My name's Nick Maida. I'm the CEO of Gainsight. I'm really excited to kick off a series that I'm super passionate about. I'm going to describe more, and with one of my longtime friends as CEO, Tien, the CEO of Zuora. Welcome, Tien.
Nick, how are you? It's good to be here.
I'm doing great. I'm excited. Wish I could see you face to face, but I'm really honored that you'd be the anchor guest for this new series we're launching. So I'll give the audience a little bit of context, and I'll introduce you a little more formally. So the context of this is, at Gainsight, when we think about how business is run and how it's been run in the past, and what we think of as the future, we talk about this idea of human first business, the concept that business isn't just about transactions and thinking of employees as assets. It's about the fact that everyone around us are just human beings, whether they're customers, prospective customers, teammates, families, and we need to have a more human approach to business. And so I've been really honored to meet some CEOs over the years that have inspired me around this idea of human first business. And one of the CEOs I spent the most time with over the last decade is Tien. Tien's the CEO of Zuora. Many of you know Tien. Tien is really the godfather of this concept that he's coined of the subscription economy. And the subscription economy is the idea that every business in every walk of life is kind of embracing this new model where we can have these recurring relationships with our customers. I'll let Tien talk about it more, but we see it in SaaS, we see it in media, we see it in lots of parts of our life. And Tien's also a true innovator in SaaS. He was one of the first employees at Salesforce, and he's now been running Zuora for more than a decade. So formally welcome, Tien. Really excited to have you here.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks so much. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to talk more about Zuora and subscription economy, and you have a book that has been really popular now. But I want to open up with a question about your human side. So we have a value at Gainsight we call childlike joy. Bring the kid in you to work every day. And so we're all enjoying some challenges and hopefully some joy as well in this quarantine world. So my question to you is, if you had to be quarantined with some celebrity, either past, present, or future, somebody famous, who would you like to be quarantined with?
Look, above it all, I'm going to want to be quarantined with my family. And so the interesting part about this right now is with everybody at home, it's so easy to reach out to so many folks. And so the videos that you're seeing of people connecting with each other, celebrities connecting with each other is pretty amazing. But obviously, if I'm going to be stuck at home, it's going to have to be with my family.
Oh, that's such a sweet answer. Now my answer is going to sound trivial by comparison. I love my family, and obviously I'm very happy to be quarantined with them. But if I picked a celebrity, I just finished the series The Last Dance. I don't know if you've seen it already, Tien, or not. It's the Michael Jordan documentary. And I would choose actually not Michael Jordan, but Dennis Rodman, who was a very colorful player from the Bulls in the 90s. So Dennis Rodman
lasts for like 24 hours and you get tired of that?
I think that a lot of just kind of crazy stuff would happen. It would add some adventure, but yeah, it might burn the house down in the process.
Exactly. Yeah, forget quarantine. Go out on the town.
Exactly. Well, I want to talk about a few different things as kind of in this series. I want to talk about the idea of us leading with this human first concept. I want to talk about subscription economy and sort of this change in the way business is happening. I want to talk about customer success, which is kind of near and dear to my heart. So let's start talking about that kind of human first element. And just, I know you really have a very values driven culture. I love how you talk about it. And so if you could talk a little bit about how you're leading the Zuora's values right now in this kind of unique time in our history.
Well, I'll tell you, I love this human first theme. And if you go back to the birth of software as a service, right? And certainly you were a big part of it as well. We've certainly talked so much about software as a service over the years. And I bet a lot of listeners are software as a service companies that are trying to drive customer success. But what we found is go back to 1999, is that the software industry as a whole was starting to get to the point where they had forgotten about their customers, right? They would ship the CD out and, it's like, you figure it out, you install it in the database. If you need help, go get Accenture, right? Go get Deloitte to do it for you. And what we figured out is by offering the software as a service over the internet, it connected us back to our customers. And we can actually see when our customers are struggling to use the software. We could see that when customers weren't logging in, right? When they called us up, we can actually see their data. We can see how they were using the application. And it really brought the customers to life. And I just remember the first time we were seeing customers having a hard time with our product, we just started to call them. And they were shocked. They were like, well, I didn't really call customer support. It's like, no, we saw that you're having a hard time and we just wanted to reach out and help you. And so our philosophy of the subscription economy, and we saw this in the software as a service industry, is to bring that human connection back to the engineers, right, the vendor, the provider, back to their customers, versus like what we see is this multi-step distribution channel where you give it to the distributor, who gives it to the warehouse, who gives it to the retailer, and somebody's out there buying it, but you have no idea who they are, right? And the first time you interacted with them is when they call the support lines. And that didn't make any sense. So the heart of this whole idea of the subscription economy is to remember that we're just humans on both sides, and that relationship between us as human beings as the anchor for the business is really, really important.
That's amazing. I love that. That's really resonates. And I think it's an important lesson, because you probably see a lot of subscription economy companies in terms of their business model that haven't fully adopted that mindset and that set of values. And I think you've written a lot about that in your book, Subscribed, where it's not just about implementing technology, but it's about a different mindset.
Yeah. And our favorite story right now is actually guitars. And so when people read the book and they come back to, well, what story did you like about the book? Often they'll talk about Fender, right? Fender is actually a very famous guitar manufacturer, but they had that model, right? They put the guitars in, say, Guitar Center, and they know someone's going to buy it. The new CEO came from Disney, came in and said, let's look at it from the customer's point of view, right? And it turns out the customers buy a guitar, and after 3 months, it just winds up in the attic. It winds up in the attic, it winds up in the closet. It's just too hard. And so they're like, that's crazy. And so he took a customer success mindset to say, our job is not to sell a guitar. Our job is to get them to play the guitar. If we can get them past that 1 year mark, they actually start playing for life, right? It becomes part of who they are. They love music. They find the joy in the music. And so they launched this thing called Fender Play that teaches customers how to play. And so a few months ago, when they noticed that we're all stuck at home, and they're like, well, how do we do our part? You can go watch that Tiger show on Netflix, or maybe you do something constructive, a little more active, right? And learn how to play guitar. So they said, look, why don't we just give away 100,000 seats for free? And they had 1 million people sign up. And so there's 1 million brand new guitar players, and they were only able to do that because they know who their customers are. They had a customer first mindset, and they engaged with their customers directly. So as their customers' needs changed, they were really able to adapt to the customers. And I just find that story really, really inspiring.
It's a funny footnote to that story is my birthday was last week, and my wife got me a Fender guitar with the Fender Play subscription.
Yeah, what lesson are you on?
I'm one of the new guitarists, one of the million.
That's great. That's great. There's videos of that guy that teaches you, Matt. There's videos of him teaching his daughter how to play the guitar. Awesome. His Instagram account is pretty cool.
That's great. Well, I think just this values-driven area is something we're really passionate about as well. So I appreciate you sharing. I think you talk about your team you call them ZEOs, right? Tell us about what that means. What's a ZEO?
Well, yeah, it's a good story. I mean, we were about 150 employees probably. We were wrestling with what our corporate values are. And so, oftentimes we'll just take the whole company, right, getting harder and harder to do and go somewhere. And obviously a little hard to do right now, but we were up in Napa, I think at the Metalwood. And so we said, hey, what were our values? And the guy, Kyle, who runs marketing right now, came up and told the story. And the punchline to the story was, look, I came to a startup from a big company because I want more responsibility, right? And I realized I have to think like I'm the CEO of my own function. And everybody just took that word and ran with it. And somebody at some point said, well, look, maybe what we are all are is we're all CEOs. And so we all want to be leaders. We all want to be our best. We all want to be pushed. We all want to be empowered. Obviously, with that power comes a certain amount of responsibilities. I did an interview once with someone from the outside that says, look, I love your CEO culture because it means I can do whatever I want. It's like, well, no, that's not exactly what it means. I can't even do whatever I want. Right. And so that really has been a part of our culture. Right. How do we create an environment where everyone gets pushed to be their very best and gets to lead and gets to be empowered?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really great. Something I wrote about, during the downturn, which I think you're passionate about as well, is just keeping people positive, even during these tough times. I wrote a blog post about just how do we find ways to keep our team positive, even though there's so much negativity around. And how have you changed your leadership style in these last couple months? What new things have you added to the Zuora culture?
Well, certainly there's a lot of things that we adapt to for Zoom. I'm sure you and your listeners are doing it all. I'd love to hear from you as well for some of these ideas, because you are Mr. Energy, and how you're able to do that cooped up in your house is got to be a fantastic story. But what I went back to is and certainly we've talked about this with some of the other SaaS companies. We're fortunate enough to have a subscription-based business model, right? We're fortunate enough to be in an industry with technology that's really about the future, and companies still need us, and we have a recurring revenue model. And so when we get together to talk, we're talking more about how much our growth rate is going to slow versus how much our revenue is going to drop. And so my sense is, look, we're fortunate enough to have a stability in the company with our business models, with our customers. And if the world simply has all this chaos, how can our company and our business model, for not just our employees, for our customers, be a source of stability and kind of help all of us kind of get through this? And we have a strong role that we can play with that stability. And so just constantly reminding people, right? Look, we're going to be okay. We're going to be stable. If you got to go take care of yourself, definitely do that. Same thing with the customers, right? If customers are in a tough situation, let's make sure we take care of them. And that's a really, really important mindset to get back to.
That's great.
How are you unleashing the meta energy when you're trapped at home?
Well, I'll tell you both. It's funny you said that, because my learning, there's been two sides of that. So yeah, as you said, I guess people call me high energy. Maybe that is a part of my brand. And there's two sides. How do I maintain the energy? But also, how do I be empathetic of other people that are going through a lot of stuff right now? So I'll give you both sides of that. So on the maintain side, part of this, I think, you and I are both like students of the game, right? Learning. We love learning. And for me, part of it's been learning how do you bring energy in this virtual setting? Learning how to do it into the camera. We did a virtual event a few weeks ago. We had 22,000 people there. You have your events coming up. How do you make those be fun? How do you not make them feel like webinars? How do we do this LinkedIn Live thing, right? The learning has been really fascinating for me, finding ways to make things interactive. So that's one step. Another step, I think, for me is just regulating my own self. I remember the first day I was working from home, which was, I guess, probably March 11th. And I got home, and actually March 12th. I got home March 11th, and then March 12th, I worked all day like everyone. And I felt so exhausted at the end of the day, just sitting there at my desk, just totally wiped out. I never feel exhausted. And what I figured out is I need to get out. And so what I started doing is every day I walk at least 10,000 steps every day. I do calls while walking, not video, just phone calls. And I report to the company how many steps I have. So I do a daily Slack post of what I did that day and how many steps. And that's kept me accountable to keep myself healthy as well. But on the other side, I am Mr. Ball of energy all the time. I've learned to be empathetic to people who are not feeling fired up. Right now it's pretty hard. Some people have kids at home that are really young, and they're trying to balance like being a teacher, being a parent, being a CEO leader, being a manager, worrying about their job. And so I've had to learn and tell my team, it's okay if you don't feel fired up sometimes. It's okay if you don't feel okay. So trying to balance compassion with energy, that's been a learning for me.
Yeah. Did you guys do that day off last week?
Yeah. So we're doing one on Monday. So Monday. And it's funny because we all get these ideas from other people. I've learned so much from you, and none of my ideas are original. I did an event with a CEO a couple weeks ago, the CEO of Sisense. And he said he just randomly picked a day to give people off. And he said, let's just take a day off. And so we picked June 1st for no particular reason. And so Monday is a day off for Gainsight. And we're just going to all, we're not going to go anywhere because we can't go anywhere. But we're going to take some time to just stay off video conferencing.
Well, no, you got to commit to no email, no Slack, no texting. Yeah.
I'm in. It's funny. That's one thing we do well. So from the beginning, in our values, one of the things we've said we do is on Saturdays, like outside of the downturn, on Saturdays, no emails. You're not allowed to send an email unless it's like an urgent, critical thing.
Yeah.
So we've done that.
You just got to be sensitive. You got to be sensitive to this new environment, right? We're all in this a new situation together. We're all learning together. You got to give room for people to give some feedback, give some ideas, and just adapt.
Awesome. One of the last things on this human first topic I want to talk about is resilience and empathy. You write a lot. I love your newsletter. You do I think once a week, and just all the observations you have. And you talked about resilience. You talked about empathy. We need that right now. Talk about how that fits into your business, your product. Just how you think about society in general.
Well, and so what we love about the subscription business model is the resiliency, right? And the word grit is often used to describe our culture as well, right? As long as what it means to be a CEO, leadership, empowerment, and resiliency is certainly one of them. And I think there's a couple dimensions to it. One, certainly the business model. It's good to have a resilient business model. And so most business models, if you don't have a subscription business, you start at the 0-yard line, right? You start in your end zone. You got to push all the way to get to the targets. And the great thing about subscription business models, which is why you have to focus on customer success, is if you focus on customer success, you start near the finish line, right? You start 10 yards away, not 100 yards away, and now you're trying to surge and grow. And so if you do a good job of taking care of your customers, that whole predictability of the business model certainly plays into gear. The other thing I'd say, though, resiliency is this whole concept of grit, right? And you see the book that Angela Duckworth wrote. Yeah, and it's part of, there's a lot of startups, I'm guessing, is listening to the phone. There's a lot of big companies, right? But when you have these new ideas, oftentimes people say, well, what is the secret of a successful startup and longevity? And I talk about it's got to be the last man standing. And there's almost just, work through the ideas, work through the breakthroughs, and know there's another one that you have to work through. And when you look back 5, 10, 15 years, hopefully you're really proud of what it is that you've accomplished. That's
amazing. Great advice. Well, this, you hit on something that I think is really timely right now, which, and you said it well, because of this subscription business model being so resilient, it's forcing companies to really double down on their customer base. I think you guys are seeing that as well. What we're seeing when I talk to CEOs right now, every one of them says, my priorities are make sure we're financially sound, take care of our employees, and keep our customers, and that doesn't come for granted. You got to actually make that happen. And right now, customer success in kind of the whole concept of retaining customers has become prime time for a lot of companies. You're probably seeing that in your business as well. And I think you've seen in your data set, I saw this report you put out, Tien, that it was actually pretty amazing. Because you track so much of the subscription economy through your product, you're able to see which companies are growing, which companies are shrinking, and you put this report about usage in the subscription economy. What did you see overall?
Well, we saw that why is it that you got to take care of your customers? Again, it's the business model, it's the predictability of the business model. We saw that about half our customers, we just looked at subscriber acquisition rate because we thought that was the indicator. So there's certainly aspects of revenue per subscriber, right? And in SaaS parlance, right? People might downsell a little bit. And certainly there's that effect. But when we looked at subscriber acquisition rates, we saw about half the companies really had negligible impact in their subscriber acquisition rates. About a quarter actually saw a surge. And probably, one of the most high-profile examples out here right now are Zoom, right? Zoom, e-learning applications like Fender Play. And they're just hitting the sweet spot right now, right, given the current situation where they're just seeing their acquisition rates skyrocket. And then about a quarter are actually seeing their acquisition rates slow down. But in that group, half of those, about 1/8 of the whole pie, is actually still growing, just growing slower. And about an 1/8, the last 1/8, are actually seeing their subscribers contract. And so the subscriber churn is starting to outpace subscriber acquisition. But even then, they have large subscriber bases. And so you can tell they're going to be able to hold on to a good chunk of their subscriber acquisition rates or the subscriber base. And so taking care of your customers is really the most important thing. But I'd love to hear from you too. Because you're in the middle, if you've got to take care of your customer base, customer success becomes so much more important. What are you seeing in terms of what your customers are doing right now during this?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll share some anecdotes. It's pretty interesting. We have a strategic advisory board, just like you guys do at Zuora, I'm sure. And we had, about 30 of our largest customers, which are chief customer officers at some of the largest tech companies out there. We got them together a couple weeks ago, and I said, hey, how many of you are getting more focus from your CEO on customer success versus less in the downturn? No surprise, 100% said more focus, which is interesting. But then I asked them, what are you focused on now? What are you doing that you weren't doing before? And they actually listed out a whole bunch of things, scoring your customers, early warning system, using technology to automate. It was basically a list of everything, the way they said it, everything we should have been doing all the time. We're finally doing it now. So it's kind of like all those things that you might have deferred before are actually happening. And then I asked them, what are they doing less of in the downturn? What's happening less? And they said they had one answer. They said the one thing we're doing less of is having to justify customer success internally, because everyone knows it's now important. It's so existential. And so we're seeing this go from like, why do we need to do it? Or what do we need to do to just like, how do we actually do it really quickly? So that's like one big trend. The second trend we're seeing is customers are putting pressure on vendors because they're not renewing everything just by default. Customers are like scrutinizing. They're looking at every line item in their P&L, and they're saying they're not necessarily cutting vendors, but like you said, Tien, they're cutting spending, they're downgrading, they're cutting seats. And if you're not on top of it, your customers are going to cut spending with you. And then number three, really interesting, and you guys are a public company, so you can probably attest to this. I've been on so many calls now with research analysts who are trying to understand customer success and retention because it's such a core part of the model when new logo acquisition slows down. I was on a call just today with RBC, with Alex Zukin at RBC, who you may know, and he had me on, second time he had me on with all of his public buy-side clients because they want to get deeper in this world. And so I'm seeing the investors get more savvy about customer success and retention, which obviously if they're more savvy about it, companies are going to have to get more serious about it. So in summary, I'd say it's everything that everyone knows they should have been doing, but they're just starting to do it now for real, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, here's an anecdote for you. I mean, obviously, in this environment, we're all being careful about headcount, but I told my customer success team, go ahead and hire 10 more people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really, it's funny. We did a survey that we haven't published the results yet, but we just got the results. And we surveyed CEOs and CXOs of publicly traded and late stage SaaS companies. We asked them to rank their various sales and marketing initiatives. New customer acquisition, expansion, and reducing churn. The number one thing by far was preventing and managing churn. And then number two was driving adoption of the product. Number three was expanding existing customers. Number 8 was new logos, not because they don't want new logos, but we all know that it's more challenging out there to get new clients. So, but on that retention point, I want to click into something that I think you have really unique insight into, which is the tactics for keeping customers. And there's some of it is about how you service the customer, but some of it's all the pricing, packaging, offers, and you have such a great data set on that. What's some creative stuff you've seen for people trying to retain customers?
Yeah, so the top three things that we're seeing is, and you see on both sides, and when I talk about the 50% no effect, 25% accelerating, 25% decelerating, you sort of see that the current situation doesn't hit everybody equally, right? And so there's a disparate impact that you're seeing out there. So we see both sides. So for the companies that are saying, look, we're in an environment right now where there's a high need for what we do, and how do we capitalize that? There's a lot of new pricing plans, right? So Fender giving away 90 days free. I think Pluralsight did free April, and it was out got like 1 million signups, right? In the month of April, and they teach you how to, use technology, use computers and whatnot, and it was a fantastic experience for them. And then we're seeing on the other side, and so we're seeing gyms basically saying, hey, we're closed, and so how do we suspend? And so the idea of launching new price plans is probably one of the top ones. Suspending memberships and subscription fees, say for 3 months. So, hey, don't cancel it. We're just going to suspend your membership for 3 months, and hopefully in 3 months our gym will be open again. All the way through, I think Resi was another one. It's a restaurant service, right? Obviously, restaurants are closed, but there's a lot of restaurants that are still open for takeout. And so they're like, well, how do we retool our application to help our customers? That nimbleness and that agility is really, really important. But then let's just issue credits. Let's credit them their March bill. Let's credit them their April bill. And so holding on to the customers, and as you continue to deliver value for the customers is the key. And I think this is, moments like these, is certainly your technology is really, really important, but this is where our technology starts to shine, right? The agility that we can help companies do that, so they don't have to go back to their engineers and spend another 60 days, right, to code those things. You don't have to go back to your Oracle implementation. right? To kind of retool that, with our system, it just happens.
I love that. Tien, that's amazing, because I think that is so inspiring as an entrepreneur yourself, a very successful one. And you see these entrepreneurs just like with so much creativity, and not just the tech ones, but the like small business entrepreneurs out there just pivoting on a dime, coming up with new ideas. And like you said, you need the right infrastructure to let you pivot, in terms of your pricing and packaging, which Zuora can help with, or obviously the way you service your customers, which Gainsight can help with. So on that note, one of the things that you also have a lot of insight into is this sort of subscription-based pricing versus usage-based pricing. And I know it's not an either or, but on the usage and consumption-based models that are quite popular these days, right now, some companies might have explosions in usage, and I'm guessing that creates big bills for customers. Are you seeing any interesting trends there about how they're managing the upswing in spending and pricing and not surprising their customers?
Well, consumption-based billing is the future. Consumption-based billing clearly is the future. I think, Amazon Cloud they're all teaching us how to think about this. The way we think about it is our analysis showed us this. Our analysis showed us that the companies that grow the fastest are the companies that use some level of usage-based billing. So companies that do usage-based billing or consumption-based billing grow faster than companies that do not.
That's interesting.
But companies that do all usage-based billing actually grow slow as well. So you see it's just this sort of bell curve, and the peak looks like it's somewhere between 25 to 50%. And so what you see is, as a buyer, you don't want to overpay, right? And so you don't want to, but you don't want to be on a clock either, right? You want the freedom to be able to use your application. So people ultimately want to be able to slot into tiers that make sense for them. So think of it as reserve pricing in the Amazon parlance, right? But if you want to surge and you want to go over, you want the ability to do that. And so giving the customer some level of control over that becomes really, really important. So we encourage everybody to do some level of consumption-based pricing, because that allows you to hit that sweet spot of allowing companies to feel like they're not overpaying, but they're also not on the clock.
That's great. No, really, really good advice.
Good. Yeah. How about you guys? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we're seeing in general, in terms of, because you guys see you see a lot of the financial side of it with pricing, with billing. We see the client-facing side of it, right? That's why there's so much, kind of synergy, I think, between Zuora and Gainsight. And what we see is, in this world of like the downturn, there's been this almost like going from defense to offense, or kind of going from surviving to thriving that's happened the last few weeks, right? It's amazing how fast it's happened. I would say the first phase for every company was, oh my gosh, the world is upended. Let's triage our customers, right? Put them into the categories, the ones that are negatively affected, the ones that are neutral, the ones that are positive. You guys did that. You wrote about that. Everyone did that. A lot of them did that with Gainsight, kind of managing that process. We saw a lot of advice. Most people at this point have done that. The next phase was then triaging the requests for concessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The pauses, the delays, all that stuff, which is all, some of it's legitimate. We all know that some companies were taking advantage. They weren't effective, but they were asking for the relief, and some legitimately.
It's a COVID relief fund. It doesn't always go to the place, but
that's right. Some private equity funds were trying to get some COVID relief, I think. So the third tier that we're seeing now, we're I think in going in more of the offense area is saying, okay, it's not just about triage. Let's look at like the things we should have always been doing that we're now going to do more proactively. So people getting much more rigorous about getting early warning on risk, right? That's always, everyone from the days at Salesforce, you were in the early days, that's, people talked about it, but really getting super rigorous on it. Getting really good about tracking your clients' goals. So it's not just about selling them software, what's their outcome, and building kind of a success plan to get them to their outcome. Doing a great job of driving adoption, not just about rolling out the product, but actually driving adoption of the key features and kind of use cases, so that they want to renew the whole thing, right? Because one of the challenges people have is that downgrade, where they are like, I'm not really getting that much value. I need to bring my spending down. How do you get them to use more of the platform, during that time frame? So people are doing a lot more in-product adoption stuff, which we can help with. They're doing more automated emails to drive adoption, but basically really getting adoption, not just of the basic stuff, but of the stuff that makes you really, really sticky and makes you more strategic for your customers. And then finally, through all of that, getting to the point where you can be talking about expansion again. And I think people are getting a little bit more, okay, some of our customers are really hurting, but some of them are doing well. Cybersecurity, telemedicine, online education, conferencing. How do we get all over those and work with the sales team to drive some expansion? And I'm seeing this really quick shift from defense to offense.
That's great. One of the things that when you say that, it reminds me of is something you guys do really well, and we try to do too, is in this period of uncertainty, companies are eager to talk to each other, right? Like, well, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about this? And given, us as vendors and software providers or technology providers, we can play a role in bringing that community together. So what we saw was, we use Zoom to do these webcasts to teach customers how to do these suspend and resumes, how to do these mass credits. And so like halfway through, they're like, okay, we understand the technology. That's super useful. And they wanted to use that breakout rooms feature in Zoom to say, okay, well, look, 5 or 6 of us, we're kind of in the same industry. Can we go break off? Because we want to talk about the other stuff. Well, how did you sell it to your management that this is what you wanted to do? How did you present it to your customers, right? What are the gotchas that you saw when you rolled it out? And what are the other learnings that you can have? And so that sense of community and the ability to talk to other companies that are in the same situation is really, really important during these times of uncertainty.
That's such a good point, Tien, because there's, as you observe, both of our companies have been really big about community since the early days, and we do all these conferences, all these events. And I think what's exciting about this current time frame is you can create these micro communities, because your customers in a certain industry may not all be in the same geographic location, so you couldn't get them together for dinner, but you can totally get them together in a Zoom conference, right? We're seeing the same thing where, security companies getting together to talk about customer success. I just did an event yesterday on that, right? That type of a thing. And I think that that's something that software companies underinvested in historically. They thought of themselves as technology providers, but really what they do is they bring together expertise, and technology is an enabler of that. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us to do more. And the thirst for it is amazing. Like I'm sure you see the same thing, the attendance, the engagement. People want to learn more than ever. That's awesome. Well, we have had an action-packed half an hour here. I really appreciate it. I'll close out with a fun closing, which is we might be nearing the end of quarantine in the Bay Area. Who knows? What's something you're looking forward to doing when we get back to real life again?
If once we open up, I'm just going to a movie theater. I know people think it's the death of the movie theater, but it's just a different experience than watching Netflix at home. And so, I really miss, concerts. I think that might be a little ways off, right? So I'll take the first wave, which is just, it'd be nice to eat at a restaurant, especially the weather's out. It's so nice right now. It's like, well, why can't we just eat outdoors at these restaurants? And hopefully they'll let us do that soon. But I do find myself missing concerts, sports events, Broadway musicals and whatnot. And so it'll be good to get back into that when the world is ready.
Well, I'm psyched to go have a meal with you sometime soon and got see a movie. Mine, by the way, which maybe you can appreciate, is I'm actually most excited to get a haircut. So that's my. I
forgot about that. That's the first thing we're like, there's gonna be like a long line. It's gonna be like $200.
Oh my God. The barbers are gonna clean up very soon. Well, thank you so much to everyone watching, Tien. It's been such a pleasure, and thanks for being such a great friend, and really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.